Welcome, students from Wyoming. Congratulations on being invited to the national finals. It says something about how hard you have worked, and I congratulate you for that. As we are to be your judges, you should know who we are. I'm Edward Volpe. I'm an attorney from Denver, Colorado. I've been associated with this program for a long time and have nothing but praise for the program and for all of the students who participate. I look forward to your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi students, my name is Caitlin Johnston. I am an attorney in New York City, and when I was growing up in Indiana, I was a We the People participant, but I did not make it to nationals, so you've already bested me. Very best of luck today. I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, students. I'm Ed Murphy. I'm a Superior Court judge in Tacoma, Washington, and I offer my congratulations to you as well for making it to nationals and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
And would the students introduce themselves, please?
Nice to meet you. I'm Aubrey Cooper.
I'm Isabel Cleland.
I'm Hannah Sullivan.
And I'm Medora Perkins, and we're Unit 5 from Sheridan, Wyoming, here with our mentors Kim Ferguson and Michael Thomas.
And welcome to them as well. The question we have for you today, obviously you know what it is the second question of Unit 5, and I'll read it to you. A Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth, general or particular, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference. Do you agree or disagree with Thomas Jefferson? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a national Bill of Rights as compared to state bills of rights? What are the differences between positive rights and negative rights, and which are more important to the preservation of liberty? You may begin.
George Mason proclaimed, "In all our associations, in all our agreements, let us never lose sight of this fundamental maximum, that all power was originally lodged in and is derived from the people. We should wear it as a breastplate and buckle it on as our armor."
As a panel, we support Thomas Jefferson's claim to the entitlement of the people to a Bill of Rights.
Without the anti-federalist push for the addition of a Bill of Rights within the Constitution, the freedoms of the people and precedent of the Supreme Court's rulings, such as Kyle v. United States and Texas v. Johnson, would lack meaning in today's society.
Seen through the various decisions of the Supreme Courts, the Bill of Rights continues to serve as a crucial buffer between the people and the government.
For example, Tinker v. Des Moines dictates the protection of students in public schools, and Mapp v. Ohio regulates the protections of the Fourth Amendment.
Most importantly, on the subject of a Bill of Rights, Roger Sherman declared that these are undoubtedly important points, much too important to depend on mere paper protection.
The Bill of Rights is a clear outline of freedoms obtained by the people and continues to ensure that the government shall not become tyrannical.
Although there are many key differences between the National Bill of Rights and the individual state Bill of Rights, both coordinate to recognize the precious freedoms obtained by American citizens.
Primarily, a national Bill of Rights is crucial to preserving the unity of a nation.
Without a doubt, it creates universally applied rights to the entirety of America.
Specifically, the precedent set by the court pertaining to the First Amendment in Brandenburg v. Ohio and Cohen v. California protects freedom of speech in all 50 states, whereas previous state laws had restricted it.
In comparison, Alexander Hamilton declared, "The sacred rights of mankind are not to be rummaged for among old parchments and musty records. They are written, as with a sunbeam, in the whole volume of human nature, and can never be erased or obscured by moral power."
Alexander Hamilton and other Federalists argued that a Bill of Rights was unnecessary and that writing down our rights would only add limitations.
However, the 10th Amendment ensures the states are also able to protect rights more specific to the individual region.
For example, states' Bill of Rights tend to protect things like education, health care, and conduct of jails.
More specific rights, such as property taxes or the right to education, have become issues regulated by the states.
In particular, the Wyoming State Constitution states that the right of citizens to opportunities for education should have practical recognition, providing crucial rights to all the youth in Wyoming.
Moreover, state rights are more personal in order to properly serve and protect citizens of a state, whereas a National Bill of Rights acts as a general uniter and guidelines for rights of all American citizens.
In continuation, the Bill of Rights is divided into two types of special freedoms, that being positive and negative rights.
First and foremost, positive rights are freedoms that are imposed upon others or the government to provide or act upon a right.
This can be seen through ideals like the right to health care or housing.
Continuously, positive rights became further recognized following America's Great Depression through FDR's New Deal, with the creation of Social Security and a new Economic Bill of Rights.
On the other hand, negative rights are freedoms that impose a negative duty, meaning that one cannot face compulsion from doing what they please in regards to that right.
More so than positive rights, negative rights have played a key role in the preservation of liberty.
To elaborate, the Supreme Court favors cases of the First and Fourth Amendment, as it is negative liberties that prohibit the government from disregarding crucial rights.
After all, the majority of the American Bill of Rights is composed of negative rights, while state constitutions hold more protection over positive rights.
By allowing American citizens to obtain their own free will, the Bill of Rights' negative liberties have gained major importance in the preservation of natural rights.
President Abraham Lincoln famously stated, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves."
In conclusion, states' rights and the National Bill of Rights generate a balance between both negative and positive liberties that prioritize liberty and justice for all.
We are now ready to take your questions.
Thank you for your comments. Let me begin by asking what limits can actually be placed upon individual rights by the government, state or federal, with regard to rights of citizens such as the freedom of speech. What limits can be placed upon them by their government?
As seen through cases like Shank v. United States, the freedom to freedom of speech can be limited based off of fighting words or words that might harm another specific party.
Continuously in Brandenburg v. Ohio, we can see that direct incitement and imminent lawless action can result in limitations of the government towards freedom of speech.
What circumstances, if any, would cause a person to lose rights that they have in either the Bill of Rights or under the Constitution?
Ruled in Gregg v. Georgia, it can be seen that they ruled that the Eighth Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment does prohibit one to the death penalty if they have killed somebody else or harmed another or taken away the life of another person. So from that we can see that even if you are taking away the life of another person, you are taking away or you're losing your rights as well.
Additionally, as seen in the case of Hyundai v. the United States, if you are committing treason against your country, you can lose certain rights.
Do you think that felons should have the right to vote?
We actually did a lot of research on this for our essays for state, and we found that a lot of states have different regulations on the right for inmates to vote. And so in Wyoming, federal inmates can regain their right to vote after going through a program. And so we think that it's up to the states whether they should be able to regulate those voting rights.
This can be compared to in D.C., where felons never lose their right to vote.
Thank you.
What is the difference, if any, between rights that are added through the amendment process and those that are established by court decision?
Most commonly, we see that court decisions have a greater impact on expanding the rights that are already in the Bill of Rights. So Cohen v. California or Brandenburg v. Ohio or even Tinker v. Des Moines touch on subjects that aren't necessarily spaced out in the Constitution, but for instance in Bethel School District v. Fraser, students were able to, the court was able to rule on how students' freedom of speech is allowed in public schools. So the court decisions usually elaborate more on topics that are outside of the Constitution, which can also be seen in Obergefell v. Hodges and Roe v. Wade.
In the amendment process also, that I feel like since the amendment process is such a difficult way to add new rights to our amendments, that it's such a difficult process and it makes it difficult for those rights to be fulfilled as a national right or liberty.
One of the differences between state bills of rights and state constitutions as opposed to the federal constitution is something called citizen initiative. Can you describe what that is and tell me how important you think it is to state bills of rights?
I think one thing that's interesting is that in different states across the United States, for funding for education, they use mills, which is taking initiative from local communities to fund different types of education, whereas it's not a state or national funding plan for education.
Continuously, I think we can see that citizens initiative is more important in state constitutions and such, because state constitutions are more able to reflect the direct need of the people in those states. So as my colleague was talking about, in Wyoming currently, we're in an economic crisis and we don't have the funding we need for our education because of how our coal production has been there's a damper on our coal production. So our legislators are really working to try and figure out how to fund our education moving forward. And there's actually a really interesting thing that's been proposed in selling or starting the production of marijuana in Wyoming to fund education, which I think is a very interesting way that citizens are pushing their initiative through the state Bill of Rights.
Along with what my colleague said, a lot of this can be seen through Brutus I, where they outlined that small homogeneous governments or communities are better suited to protect those rights of their citizens, which you can be seen through our state governments.
Judge Volpe, would you like to ask your follow-up question that might touch a little bit on what they just said? Or shall I?
I'm sorry, Kate, I didn't hear that.
I know you have another question that touches on what the students just said around states being able to absolve their
Citizens?
of federal.
All right.
Yes.
I'll follow up with that. Can states allow their citizens to do certain things that would constitute a federal crime?
Go.
Well, I think one of the main things that you can be seen through what the federal government has ruled as unconstitutional, it would be the legalizing of marijuana, especially since the federal courts and the federal government ruled it as unconstitutional and it was not legal. But several states like Colorado, California have all legalized marijuana, and states are setting their own precedent by legalizing marijuana, even though the federal government has ruled it illegal.
Going off of that, another important thing that was a point of contention between states and the National Bill of Rights was the right to marriage, as seen in Obergefell v. Hodges. So before that, the states were able to regulate that how they deemed fit. But when or when Hodges chose to sue, it became a national issue. And because the court took that case and then ruled on it, it's become a federal precedent that has been set. So I think that's another issue that was a point of contention but has been cleared up by the courts.
What right, positive or negative, should be added to the Bill of Rights in this panel's view?
Personally, I believe that the positive right of education should be added to the Bill of Rights, because although it can be seen in state legislature and state Bill of Rights, I think that having a national bill on education would create consistency throughout the nation.
Continuously, I think we also agree as a panel that a voting amendment or such that just clarified all of the voting amendments that we already have would be great to the nation, because it would provide guidelines on, like we talked about previously with inmates, and just establishing that consistency would help the nation, I think, have higher turnouts in voting, which would be a more productive use of our democracy.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think we're out of time. And I will begin by saying I thought you did a very good job. I appreciate the hard work that has gotten you to this point. And I will say that I think you demonstrated a good understanding of bills of rights, negative and positive rights, and the difference between state bills of rights and the federal Bill of Rights. I thought the discussion of the original feelings of the founders that certainly the anti-federalists said we've got to have the Bill of Rights to protect the citizens from the new powers that we're giving to the federal government. And Hamilton said, if we try to list the rights, we'll inadvertently leave out some that are very, very important. And that became the basis of the 10th Amendment, which said all other rights are reserved. And the 10th Amendment gives a basis for the state bills of rights that you have talked about that can be more specific and can address local issues. I thought you did a good job of explaining an understanding of citizen initiative, which of course is not allowed at the federal level, but many, many states allow the citizens to propose constitutional amendments and submit them to their state legislatures and ultimately to a convention, which then is referred to the citizens again for a majority vote. And states have repeatedly amended their constitutions with regard to matters that are important locally. I think I told a prior team, Alabama has changed its constitution 946 times. But going on with regard to the loss of rights, you talked about how individual behavior can cost you your rights. You talked about important limitations on the freedom of speech, including Brandenburg. And you talked about the development of what we would call penumbral rights, or rights implied by the Bill of Rights, including the right to choose your own spouse, as was upheld in Obergefell. And I thought you did a good job of explaining the marijuana situation, where locals can say, it's going to be local, it's going to be legal in our state, even if it's still a federal crime. The federal authorities don't appear to be too concerned about that, and they're not trying to enforce it as they might otherwise have done. With regard to broken rights, I thought the Cohen reference, the Tinker, the Bethel, South Dakota ruling, and other rights that are recognized by the courts, including Loving versus Virginia, which said interracial marriage cannot be prohibited. Those are all things that the courts have developed, and that goes to comments that I think you'll get from Judge Murphy. But that's enough from me today. And the only thing I can say is thank you for what you have just done. Thank you for what you've done over the past 2 semesters. Use this knowledge for the benefit of your fellow citizens. You know more than most of the voting public. Take this and help your citizens to understand what you now know. Congratulations,
Thank you.
Teacher,
Thank
for how
you.
well you have done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would echo that. I'm very impressed with the amount of subject matter that you all covered in such a short amount of time. You particularly shone through in the follow-up questions, great teamwork, building on each other and really listening to what each other was saying and giving us new points. I really liked the answer about the question around, like, where is it state or federal constitutions that are more effective, and why, when one of you brought in your specific situation in Wyoming. Obviously I was interested in that because I prompted Judge Volpe to ask another question that we've been asking, and you rolled with it. I think that's really stellar teams give us good flavor of the local issues and the current issues while making sure you've demonstrated your understanding of the textbook and the national issues and the foundational issues. So you really covered everything from the founders all the way through. I really liked your answer to my question on what circumstances you can lose rights. You clearly prepared for that. And my follow-up question as well. I thought we really couldn't stump you. You were ready for everything. Very, very good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't go on and on, but I echo a lot of what my previous judges have said, and I was really impressed with your abilities during the question and answer period. You did very well in your 4-minute presentation, but you have a lot of time to work on that. You've got that carefully scripted. You set all that aside, and then you start taking some questions. this is a question that can go lots of different directions. And you were prepared to be able to handle lots of different things that were thrown at you. So I was very impressed by that. Keep up the good work. As has been said, you know more than most people in the country about the Constitution, civics. Don't lose that. Keep growing it and educate other people because we need that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes this hearing today. We're going to offer you guys one more great big round of applause for. All right, at this time.